And give the instruction. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome, everybody. My name is Shada Khan. I'm the Executive Director of the Islamic Schools League of America. This is our monthly admin meeting. Many of you may be joining because of the topic today. Typically, our admin meetings are held on the third Wednesday of every month for administrators and member schools. So we invite you, if you're not a member school right now, to please reach out to me. I'll put my email address in the chat in a minute. But reach out to me to find out how you can do that, or go to our website and find the membership tab and join, because it's these kinds of meetings that arise out of our networking, out of our relationships, which is all part of the administrative load that inshallah you guys support when you become a member. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Typically, we start off with a reminder and a welcome for everybody who's new about the Islamic Schools League of America. We are a nonprofit that's been around for over 25 years. Many of you I've seen just a couple weeks ago, we hold an annual leadership retreat. I'll be trying to create some FOMO for those of you who couldn't join and some fun memories before we get into a really heavy topic, but I don't want to take too much time. Really quickly, today's agenda is just to share again about the leadership retreat, to thank you all for who are able to join, or those who made dua, or those who inshallah will join us in the future. I'm going to share an upcoming event, and then we'll get right into our topic, inshallah. Thank you to all of you who are putting in the chat where you're calling in from. I'd like to start off by asking us to set our intentions. So this question is what's at the top of your mind, but actually I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to say, let us take a minute to set our intentions. Why have we joined here today? You don't need to put it in the chat. Just make it clear for yourself and see if there's a way for you to elevate the intention by adding another component that would be pleasing to Allah to that intention. So I'll be quiet for about 30 seconds and we'll try to reset our intentions. Alhamdulillah. I hope that helped. I know that helped me. Sometimes we just go into like really, autopilot mode, and it's helpful to, okay. Do that. So alhamdulillah, once a year we host a leadership retreat on a certain topic. This year we were talking about leading thriving schools, healthy schools, healthy school culture, and transformational leadership. You might see Imam Dawood Walid was there as a speaker. Ustad Ruqayya, you'll see in a later picture, and we had Dr. Anthony Mohammed. And one of the topics that Imam Dawood led us through in our kind of a signature aspect of our retreat is this fireside chat where we have a bonfire and we talk about it. So this is something familiar to those of us who were there. It was just had come out about the news about the Quran teacher. And so we'll get into it. But mashallah, we do a lot at the retreats. We try to balance out our learning and workshops with some fun. And inshallah, I hope that I'll see you all next year. We'll announce that soon. We do have one thing coming up, inshallah, that I would like to invite you all to be aware of as you look at your emails or delete emails. Open up this email with the ISLA Research Symposium, inshallah. I'll share the link for registering. There are some phenomenal research studies that I think you all will want to know about, how to improve your practice, and to know about some of the innovative research-backed, evidence-based programs that people are doing from all around the world. We're really honored to have some very esteemed partners and collaborators in this effort to have our first annual ISLA Research Symposium virtually hosted, inshallah. And at this point, I don't want to take any more time from your precious time in talking about this very important topic. I will ask Dr. Leila Shatara, a friend, a colleague, a veteran administrator of several Islamic schools, to take over in terms of setting the stage, and then inshallah we'll move on with our panelists. Dr. Leila, I know that's not a formal introduction, but I think our audience knows you. Feel free to add in what I've missed. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Shaza. And thank you for hosting this. I'm grateful to ISLA for all the work that you do and in leading the way for our schools, inshallah. May Allah reward you. Welcome everyone to this admin meeting. It is a topic that most of us, I think most of us spend our lives trying to steer away from. It is a difficult topic to deal with, especially in our positions, but it is critical that we do. And sadly and unfortunately, it is in response to, current events. But inshallah, we will use that to propel us in some positive way forward. The topic of sexual abuse is something our community finds taboo, and it is very difficult to discuss, whether it's in our personal lives, in our professional lives. But there are several layers that we as school leaders and educators are responsible for. One is that we need to be educated. We need to understand statistically, and I think I put this in the chat, is that 90% or more of the time, the perpetrator is someone that the child is familiar with, a family friend, family member. Sorry. So, and we know based on statistics that we all have victims in our schools, and whether we're aware or not. And so this is something that we need to address. So I think that what we're going to look at today, inshallah, is what is our responsibility as school leaders and administrators in ensuring that we have some protective measures in place for our children, some educational measures, bringing awareness to our teachers, our parents, and our students. And then what are some ways that we can support anyone who has been dealing with any type of abuse? So we're going to look at what is our role as administrators, what do we provide for our teachers as far as awareness and understanding, detecting, dealing with, and then how do we educate our parents about this as well, how to keep their children safe, how to talk to their children, and how to and I guess the third aspect is how to deal with anyone who's already been a victim. And then how do we teach our children? And at different age groups, we have to teach our children how to protect themselves and how to turn to someone they can trust. And because this is such a sensitive topic, and sometimes the people they trust are the people that are victimizing them, it is very difficult for children. And this is what makes it so challenging. How does a child who's 5 or 8 or 15 or 20 deal with feeling like there's something really wrong, but this is a person that I'm trusting and I'm supposed to trust? How do I deal with that? And that's probably the most difficult question that we have to deal with. We have some amazing experts today that will help guide us all in understanding how to educate ourselves as administrators, how to educate our parents and our teachers and our students. So I shared with Dr. Sheza and my colleagues that this is something that I've dealt with لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Um, It's been um, a part of my life, both on a personal. So sorry, and professional life. I've dealt with it in several of the schools that I've worked with and have been called many times by school leaders who are dealing with situations that they're struggling with, dealt with it with children who are victimized by the people they should be trusting the most in our schools. And I've even had to deal with staff members who were grooming. So it's a part of our schools and our communities. May Allah protect us all. We need to keep in mind that one, we have to help our children protect themselves. But number two is that there are children who suffer in silence. And so, in our role as leaders, part of our responsibility is to be protective. And so, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us today in being able to learn and to share with each other ways that we can help protect our children and prevent hurt from our children. And I apologize.
No, no need to apologize. Thank you so much, Dr. Leila. And it's obviously very personal for many of us, and some in ways we wish it wasn't. May Allah grant ease to everybody and strengthen all of us and guide us. Jazakallah khairan. We have Brother Ismail ibn Ali from Al-Fatih Academy. Al-Fatih Academy, Ismail is the principal of Al-Fatih Academy. It's really wonderful to have you on. And he'll share a little bit about what they've done at their school, just I think one weekend or 2 weekends ago. And we hope that that will be instructive for you as school leaders on what you might do. And we have some ideas about how Islam might support you. Here's the thing, like we talked about this, Ismail and I were talking, and many, Dr. Leila, Azra, Sister Afifa, to plan for this meeting. We won't be able to get to everything today. And we know that you can't do everything alone. That's why we're here together as a community. That's part of the function of ISLA and of us as brothers and sisters in Islam, greater than just an organizational connection, subhanAllah. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Brother Ismail, the principal of Al-Fatih Academy in Virginia, which is a pre-K, I think, to 8 school, and to share what they have done. It's a well-established school, mashallah. I see it as a model school in terms of the way in which they integrate Islamic standards. And for those of you who were at the ISLA retreat 2 years ago, our theme was on family life education, which Fatih Academy has an entire curriculum and a team that's worked on, so that it's not just something that we're reactive to, but that we're have it within our curriculum to talk about safe touch and so many other things. I don't want to get into it. So I'll pass the mic to you, Brother Ismail, and ask you to delve into it. After that, we'll have Sister Azra Kidwai, and then we will, I'll give her introduction at that time. And then we'll have, inshallah, probably just a very little amount of time for question and answer. So feel free to put your questions in the chat as they arise, and we'll try and address it, if not in this meeting, which ends at the top of the hour, then inshallah in a future meeting or in future correspondence.
Thank you, Dr. Shaz. I just want to confirm everybody can see the screen and hear me okay?
Yes, Jazakallah khairan, we can.
Alhamdulillah. Alrighty, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. An honor to be with you all this morning, this afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. I recognize that this is a very heavy topic. There's lots of things that can be discussed. In discussion with ISLA, we thought perhaps, given the audience and school administrators, the focus here would be just on some essential parameters that we have thought through at AFA that we think could be of use and maybe can spark some thought and conversation that you all might go back to your schools with and have regarding what are the things that we as school admin and leadership have to put in place in order to have a system to work towards the prevention of sexual abuse, and then, may Allah protect our institutions in the event that anything arises that would require any sort of reporting and or intervention, that we have the things in place to be able to deal with that. So I'm going to speak pretty high level, and I hope that that's okay. And, if the time for questions comes up and we're able to answer them, we'll do our best, inshallah. And I just want to shout out, alhamdulillah, we have other folks from Al-Fatih here on the call. We have so I actually am the head of school in terms of official title. Miss Amina, who's on the call here as well. She's our principal. Miss Afifa, who's a founder of the school. And I'm mentioning them just to mention that there's a team. And you're going to see that there's a very key component of this is going to be the team that we assemble as administrators. So Bismillah. I'm not going to go into a lot of theory, but I wanted to give you just a brief thing about when we think about students at school, right? So I'll use colors to help us view our eyes here. Students are interacting with a lot of things at school, right? And in a student's life in general, there's so many elements that formulate how or impact how they learn and grow. And as schools, we play a huge component in the role of, or we play a huge role in how a child develops. And so when we think about individual classrooms and then zoom out to the whole school, there's a lot to consider. You have to consider, what is the perception in your building? What are the shared beliefs and values that we as a school aspire to uphold? What are the things to consider in terms of physical space and the academic programs and schedules and all those kinds of things? We have to look at the processes we have in place at school, policies, decision-making, assigning of teachers. We look at things like student demographics, teacher demographics. What's our context within the larger Muslim community in our specific space in the United States as a whole? That's all just on the school side. Then you look at family side. You look at peers that students have. And I want to just zoom out at this level to say that, subhanAllah, it's working at a school is an amana. I think all of us realize that. And we recognize that we're part of a larger ecosystem. And all the research has borne out that the ecosystem is real, and a student has to interact with all these different components. And we as a school can influence these components. So we have to do our stuff on the school side, but we can also be of help to families and how families should interact with their children. We can have systems in place at school to help foster good peer-to-peer relationships at school. And all of that together, inshallah, works to develop children in a healthy and cohesive space. So when something like the event, that's kind of been the spark for this regarding and teaching of Quran comes, it's a chance for us to just think about where our school fits into the larger context. And then for today, specifically with the short time I have with you, I'm going to focus on these two components, school structure and school processes. Okay, and I think you could have a deep dive into all of these things, but we're going to focus on these two and how they might relate to the family component as well. So as I said in the beginning, it's really a team effort. If you were to try and tackle all of that as your individual school, sometimes it's going to become daunting and overwhelming. And I recognize that there are budgetary restraints that schools have to work with, but really taking the time and having a strategic plan to assemble a wellness team and to formalize it and make it something that can grow is really important. That's comprised of administrators, counselors, teachers, students to some degree. Like we have a peer counseling program at our school that plays a big part of how we approach wellness at the school. You have to involve your human resources, as we'll see, as a component of that. And then there may be elements that are more in an advisory capacity, having a lawyer and potentially, being strategic in terms of as you grow your board of directors at a school, having someone with a legal background is super helpful. And again, I know I maybe just, these are reminders more than just directives, but having an imam that, you know, or a few, and sheikh, I talk about that in a little bit, social worker, therapist, all of them, again, in the capacity that you need, shows that you consider wellness a very important thing. And in those conversations, you can develop ways as a school to address the structures at the school and the processes at the school that lead to student wellness. And again, if student wellness is not there, then you don't have a framework with which to even tackle some of the concerns like sexual abuse and things related to that. You have to have the overarching framework there as well. So in terms of space and school structure, these are some things that we've implemented at AFA that we think make sense, that should be formalized within schools, and things that admin can actually think through and make sure are in place to help prevent any kind of misconduct. So it goes from considering visual boundaries, the supervision of students, making sure that there's a buddy system and staff monitoring of bathroom use, transitions between spaces. When working alone with a student, making sure something as simple as keeping the doors open, teacher requests administrator or another teacher to join if there's going to be a sensitive topic. Anytime that we admin are going to have a sensitive conversation with student or staff, we have another admin there with us, right? Very just practical, simple thing that maybe you think, someone comes to you with a concern, and they want to have a one-on-one. Well, if it's sensitive enough, it might require having another person there. There has to be some discretion, but having that as a standard, that this is what we're going to do, is really important. And this is one, the next set of bullet points here regarding physical contact that teachers have with students, right? A lot of what you'll see in the research regarding grooming and other things, touches start very innocently initially. And as students become comfortable, then other things start to occur. And so limiting physical contact, of course, we have to recognize there's an age-appropriate level of contact for students, right? And a high five and a fist bump and side hugs, for example, can communicate what you want without needing to be so physical, or in a way that could be interpreted incorrectly, right? We're trying to avoid any gray area in this kind of, when it comes to these kinds of issues. And of course, holding your staff accountable that there's no tolerance for threat of any kind, for any kind of physicality with a student in any way. And so the space that we inculcate is going to be very important for how we are proactively trying to address those kinds of concerns. When it comes to the content, the programs that we have at the school, going back to a soul-centered approach is going to be important. Of course, that's natural within our Muslim school environments, but really thinking through what that means in terms of, for example, our family life education. So how do we teach sexual health? How do we teach health and wellness? We call it family life education at our school. And we, some of that, those of you who are on the CISNA chat WhatsApp, we've shared kind of like an overarching framework of it that we're happy to share, how to address and bring up those topics with children at the right age, with the right parameters in place, and also thinking about digital safety and incorporating digital safety lessons within your classrooms. A lot of schools do things like an hour of code to do an exciting sort of STEM or programming-based lesson. Well, digital safety could be its own set of lessons that happen throughout the year and are integrated for each grade level. That's going to be very important. Our students need a lot of help with navigating how to use digital tools, and our parents also need a lot of help. So I'll address that on the parent side. And then also, there are other programs that happen at the school that are not purely content. So whether it's the morning meetings or the musalla when you get together for dhuhr, halaqas you have at school, your advisory meetings with your cohorts and classes. These are all times where you can be, again, if you have a team and you think through the plan of how you want to address these conversations, those are beautiful opportunities to be able to weave those into your school. And then the types of after-school programs that you have may be an opportunity of ways that you can enhance the type of social emotional learning that's occurring within the school. So that's just on the content side. As I draw a close, when it comes to processes, each of these needs their own set of conversation. But from our end as administrators in our staff handbook, we have some very clearly delineated guidelines for the prevention of sexual misconduct and abuse. And I actually went ahead and took that whole section out, put in a separate doc, and I'll share it with Dr. Shaza, because inshallah, it could just be a template. If schools don't have that language, it's very, inshallah, you'll see comprehensive. You're free to use that language. It's been reviewed by quite a number of people. And staff we spend quite a bit of time on that with staff. We come back and make recourse to it throughout the year so that they recognize that this is something that we take very seriously. When it comes to hiring, I know hiring is difficult right now, but vetting of teachers is absolutely essential. Utilizing references, making sure that your HR, whether it's you as the admin or you're having someone else follow up, that they're actually doing that follow-up, that they're actually getting, if a teacher says they're certified in whatever, you actually get the certificate from them. Like, all of those things are so important. And they also communicate that you're professional as an institution and that you take professionalism very seriously. Most states require that we have to have some sort of child abuse recognition training as educators, so making sure that happens. And these are other just, security things here that schools need to have. And I think you'll find that if you don't have, for example, a robust security system in place, I think families recognize the need for it. And having a fundraiser specific to that can be very helpful, be very important. It communicates what you care about as a school. And then to the professionalism point, making sure that your staff are communicating professionally through the channels that the school has approved and not through personal channels or anything else like that. So these are just some reminders here. The last thing I have for you is just, we have a role in helping educate our families. And, our school held a parent info session when the news, within a week of the news breaking regarding the current case, because we recognize that a lot of families, even though they come to an Islamic school for a lot of their kids' education, they also utilize other resources outside of the school for faith education. And it can be a really confusing landscape out there. So the school can play a role in helping educate them on how to navigate that landscape. So whether that be through parent workshops, whether that be through special sessions that you host with the school, you're bringing students and parents into the school, or you're holding a virtual session. There's, I think, a lot that if we recognize that we can be that value add to families, we can help educate them because they need a lot of the education as well. And just as an example, when we had this session, we spoke a little bit about, for a lot of families, again, when you go to an Islamic school, you kind of naturally will trust that the Islamic school has qualified individuals to teach religion, Quran, Arabic, whatever, right? But when you go outside, there's not necessarily a vetting system like a school has. So how do you, even something like the titles people use for themselves, do these titles communicate something about someone's actual content knowledge? Does it communicate their knowledge of how to teach? Does it communicate anything about their character? And so we just went through that a little bit and talked about, well, if someone is teaching something but doesn't have an ijaza in it, what could that mean? What does it mean if they're teaching something without a sanad or an isnad to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How do I navigate that as a family? Should I go here? Do I go where? And it was quite astonishing. A lot of families felt that that information was beneficial because they had just never heard it put together in that way for them. So you as admin, as I conclude, you can take a lot of your knowledge as you work to build a team and help educate both families. And inshallah, as we improve our processes in the schools, hopefully we can be ahead of the curve and, be able to deal with these things, because as I guess, Dr. Leila's, a little bit about said in the beginning, it's a reality that we have to be ready for. And so the more that we proactively do, inshallah, the more we can prevent. And then inshallah, we'll learn from Sister Azra about, well, okay, how do we actually, if something does go wrong, what do we as a school do? So I'll leave that to her and her expertise, inshallah. So hopefully those were some helpful thoughts. Jazakumullah khairan.
Thank you so much, Brother Ismail. Jazakallah khair. Very helpful. And we did speak with Al-Fatih Academy. Very generous, Brother Ismail, for Al-Fatih to share that policy as a template. Inshallah, I look forward to being able to share that out to with this recording. And somebody else has asked if it's possible to share that document with the Family Life Education. So definitely let me know if that's possible, and we can help disseminate that further, inshallah. Inshallah, again, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. We do have a lot to talk about. We're not going to be able to discuss anything in full depth, obviously. This is a very broad and deep topic, subhanAllah. So Sister Azra Kidwai is our next speaker. She's the county coordinator for the New Jersey Child Assault Prevention Project. She served in a supervisory role, overseeing several workshops for staff, parents, and students. She, since 2016, worked in for this organization and has provided training or teaching workshops for over 100,000 children and students and over 15,000 adults on the topics ranging from bullying to sexual assault. She has undertaken extensive training in areas such as child abuse and neglect identification, mandatory reporting, human trafficking, and suicide prevention, with certifications from both local CPS and New Jersey Child System of Care. MashaAllah, she is a wealth of knowledge and a resource in and of herself, and we're really honored to have you here, Sister Azra, to share with us at least some aspects related to the topic of preventing, detecting, and reporting sexual abuse in our Islamic schools. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shaza, for all that introduction. It was a pretty heavy introduction. I don't want anyone to feel intimidated by it, but mashallah, it's very nice to see some of the very familiar faces. Let me know if you can hear me okay, Dr. Shaza?
Yes, we hear you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I'll try to keep it short. It was very hard for me to put things in, just gather some talking points, but I saw the agenda, what it required. I just have a few talking points, but I think later with time, we can have separate meetings on different topics that we can arrange. So I will share my PowerPoint. It was done very quickly. I'm in the middle of work, so apologize for any problems. And it's very brief. It's not too long. Can everybody see that?
Yes, we see it. Thank you, Azra.
Okay, perfect, inshallah. All right, so I have been with the New Jersey Child Assault Prevention Project for quite some time, 2016. I started training in 2015, so it is a certified project. So I will say this, this particular organization is a prevention-based program. It's not an intervention-based program, meaning they like to get into schools to train parents, staff, and the students. So it's a three-pronged approach before things happen, before there's an occurrence, before you have a victim at your hands. So it's an evidence-based program, it's a research-based program, and we just went through a whole different research phase recently. So they've been doing amazing things since 1985. In 1978, CAP was actually created in Columbus, Ohio, where a second grader was raped and sexually assaulted and murdered. So back then, they were doing amazing things with Women Against the Rape chapter. And then CAP was created in 1985, it was brought to New Jersey. So I'll just touch on these things quickly because I would like to leave more time for you guys to ask any questions that you may have. Let me just adjust that a little bit, sorry. So sexual assault, the concise definition, according to the United States Department of Justice, sexual assault is any type of sexual contact or behavior that occurs without the explicit consent of the recipient. There are many different types of assault, so I will tell you this. that 1 in 4 kids, particularly girls, and 1 in 5 to 7 boys are sexually assaulted before the age of 18, just to show you the prevalence of sexual assault. I know when you're thinking about that number and thinking about how high that number is, 1 in 4 for girls and 1 in 5 to 7 for boys, you're thinking that that can't be that high. But when you're thinking about sexual assault, there's all different types of sexual assaults that do happen that the people experience. That means at least 25% of the population, boys and girls, when they get older, are survivors of sexual assault, right? So we're talking about incest. Incest is any kind of sexual assault by a family member, not necessarily related to you by blood. So anybody who's living in the same household, a stepfather, a step parent or a step sibling, a foster parent, live-in nanny, what have you, molestation, any kind of forced sexual touch. I'll just touch on it very, very quickly. Exhibitionism, when genitalia are exposed and you're forced to look at somebody's naked body without consent or permission. Voyeurism is when somebody watches a child bathe without privacy, type of thing, and you have no idea that this is happening. Sexual harassment, any type of advances, unwanted, unwelcome messages or gestures, that sexual harassment. When generally we talk about sexual assault, everybody thinks it's molestation or rape, but it's not just that, right? CSAM is a new term for child pornography now. Child pornography has been changed a couple of years back because they decided CSAM, child sexual abuse materials, is a better term to relate to pornography, as it depicts those sexual acts that a child may be involved in, illegal for any age under the age of 18. And then we've got human trafficking, which is illegal for any age. And I would say this about CSAM, just going back. So it's not just exposing child to pornography, but also having them maybe participate in sexual acts, which are then photographed or filmed, right? Just to give you guys a general idea. So when you look at this umbrella of sexual assault and all the acts that happen under it, that number really makes sense. 1 in 4 girls. And the number for boys is a little bit higher, 1 in 5 to 7 boys. That's because boys, the number for the boys are underreported. Boys don't tend to report as much or tell an adult because they are always taught to toughen up, to act up, to man up, right? So they're always thinking that this is something that doesn't happen to me, which leads me to say that this is something that is hard to recognize for the boys, right? Here's another definition of sexual assault. I'll just skip over it. I'll be happy to share these slides with you. Consent and crime, it has to be noted what consent is. Are the participants old enough to consent? What is happening? The capacity to consent, are they debilitated? Do they have disabilities? Are they under the influence? That sort of thing. So every state has a consent age. Usually it's the age of 16. I wanted to touch on this. Most of the states have a mandated law that the DOE, Department of Education, is forced to mandate upon schools. So in New Jersey is something called Aaron's Law, and Aaron's Law was named after Erin Marin, a child sexual assault survivor, activist, author, and speaker, and she had experienced sexual assault by a neighbor and a cousin. So she does go around and does a lot of lectures and brings a lot of awareness in schools and in the community about sexual assault. So that became a law, and the requirements are that in New Jersey, the schools, so I'll read you the law. Each school district in New Jersey must incorporate age-appropriate sexual abuse and sexual assault awareness and prevention education in grades pre-K to 12. So that's a good idea to look into your state and see what the mandated requirements are. There are some variations of Aaron's Law present in every state in New Jersey. We have a toolkit by Aaron's Law that is released by Department of Education that I would love to share with you guys. I'll probably drop it in the chat during the question and answer session. So when basically the objectives are that there should be access to trainings and resources in schools, not only towards the students, but the staff and the parents should also be provided trainings. So there should be the trainings should cover child abuse risks and protective factors. There should be understanding of the indicators of child abuse, different types of child abuse and the maltreatment, and you know, you should understand the culture of child abuse and culture, also different prevention and intervention resources. So the resources out there in case there's an occurrence, and for the schools or the parents on how to deal with after the fact in case an incident has happened. So I apologize if some of the things I've mentioned, I forgot to give a trigger warning in the beginning that some of these things may be triggering or distressing for some people to hear. I know it is hard. I will say this, that I wanted to say something when it comes to our Muslim community. Silence and inaction are not options. Every Muslim adult has a moral and religious duty to protect and nurture the next generation, right? The responsibility to safeguard children extends beyond just parents. It is a collective obligation, so our fard kafaya, that involves families, educators, community leaders, and every member of the society. So we all have to come together and we take a part in this. Islam teaches us to uphold justice, protect the innocent, foster a safe and supportive environment. In this light, addressing child sexual abuse is an important part of embodying our faith and fulfilling our duty as caretakers for the vulnerable population, right? That being said, I wanted to keep it very brief. You're welcome to reach out to me. Shaza can release my email address if you have any questions in that regard. I'll stop sharing my slides. More or less, I believe that the Islamic schools need to come up with a toolkit that is available for the staff members, the administration to use. I do lead a Sunday school, have been involved in a Sunday school for some time, and I know as per our insurance policies, we have come up with child abuse guidelines that every staff is required to follow. So I'll be happy to share that as well with Shaza, that she can send out later. So that's more or less what I had, Dr. Shaza, for now. I wanted to keep it short because I know we're running short on time.
Jazakallah khairan. Very, very instructive and helpful. Yes, I apologize that we didn't do a trigger warning or even request that no children be in earshot of your of this meeting. So at this time, these were the set presenters and presentations. We wanted to leave 10 to 15 minutes for conversation or discussion. Any questions that you have for anyone who's spoken so far, or any ideas or thoughts that you have about how we can support you in fulfilling the duty, as Azra has just so eloquently stated, that each of us have. Yes, go ahead, Elena.
I wanted to ask a question about the processes for this situation when it's between children. I think we know that sometimes victims often become perpetrators. So what kind of processes do schools have in place for preventing when it's between children and students?
Does anyone here, are any of the administrators or Azra, any of you have some insight into that? And we might not have all the answers, and it's something then that we should look at. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Leila.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you clarify your question? What is it that you do as an administrator, or what is your question?
The processes, like the things that, for example, in the first presentation about different things that staff do as a protocol to prevent. We talked about like keeping doors open, having other adults in the room. So the same type of protocols to prevent it when it's between students.
So I think, okay, so monitoring, I guess, when children are alone is basically because it's the same as bullying, right? It happens when no one else is around and no one else can see it or hear it, supposedly. It's almost impossible to do that, right? We can't be everywhere all the time. So the best way to handle it is to actually equip children with the tools on how to deal with it if it happens. But having said that, there shouldn't be extended periods of time when children don't have an adult that's monitoring them. And when children know that there's an adult monitoring them, I've dealt with a couple of situations like that. When the abuse occurred from child to child, it was during extreme extended times when parents would have gatherings after school, or children were left on the playground with teachers at a distance. So one of the things that you want to make sure is that children have an eye on them, like you have an eye on children. That should be the case anyway. You have an eye on children at all times. Teachers shouldn't be distracted when they are taking care of or monitoring or teaching children at any time, whether it's lunch or recess or PE. And that's one of the challenges for us as school leaders, is how to keep teachers really focused on that supervision piece, right? And that's a constant for us. Supervise at all times. They're your responsibility, right? So that's something that you have to kind of enforce within your staff. And it's a reminder for parents as well, because our children do a lot of things outside of school together. And when parents get together, they are even less attentive to what's happening, because they feel like, oh, we're with, people we trust again. So what we need to be aware of as adults is that we cannot leave children on their own for too long. And something Brother Ismail brought up is also technology. Leaving children alone with technology unsupervised is also very, very dangerous. So a lot of it is awareness, then supervision by teachers. And saying that to teachers, like bullying happens, victimizing happens when adults are not watching. So it's our responsibility to be that watchful eye. I hope that helps. I don't think we have a clear-cut, answer.
No, thank you, Jazakallah khair.
We have another Zainab here in the chat who's asked, how do you speak with children when they do inappropriate things? For example, at lunchtime, while students were lining up, I just observed a 4th grade student who was holding his lunchbox at his waist and thrusting, and the other students were saying he's doing something weird. I was able to stop that action in the moment, but how do I have a conversation with the student and the family about the inappropriateness of those types of actions? And I feel like, Zainab, if I can add here, especially actions where a student can claim I wasn't doing anything, and, can claim innocence in that. How do you have that conversation as an administrator? And you have parents who are going to say, what are you talking about? And that wasn't even suggestive. And, I'm just adding here, Zainab, I don't know if that's all of what you meant, but I can imagine.
So if
Anyone
I
have any thoughts? Yeah, go ahead, Azra.
I will add something here. So all kids have certain level of sexual curiosity. And I will say this, that the kids are very black and white thinkers. They don't have that gray area of discernment, right? So if you're dealing with a younger age group, they are not going to know that certain behaviors are inappropriate. This is where, obviously if something does happen in the presence of other peers, just drawing the attention away quickly, not putting them in the spotlight, not, making a subject of embarrassment, and just making the parents aware of it. Because I believe you said a 4th grade student, they're not high above, like we have middle-aged, upper grade levels and high school levels, that the students are still unclear as to what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, like when it comes to sexual remarks, sexual comments, gestures, that sort of thing, right? So education is very important, training is very important, alerting the parents is very important, but I think just just making it a disciplinary issue at a young age is not necessary at this point, because there's a lot of sexual curiosity there, and just letting the parents deal with that child and just bringing the parents' attention to it, maybe having an open dialogue, especially if another child was involved in that action, if the child was not involved themselves. We have had things that have happened with kindergartners or 1st and 2nd grade students. So just having that open dialogue with both parties, both parents, and obviously without the presence of the child, it's important. But the kids do not have that discernment, that differentiation built in yet. So they are unable to know. That's why they're more prone to the conditioning and the grooming that Brother Ismail spoke about, that it's very important for the teachers and the staff and the educators to recognize the habit clues, the indicators of child abuse. Kids may be neglected or bullied at home or elsewhere, and now they're coming to school. They're in your guidance, in your care. You should be able to recognize, if the behavior is all of a sudden changing. It may not be obvious marks and signs. I'll tell you this, that in the state of New Jersey, parents are, for example, sorry, I'm going off topic, but it just came to me that I should have mentioned it, maybe are allowed to physically discipline a child, right? But there's a very fine line between discipline and abuse, physical discipline and abuse. They cannot aim for the head or the face. They have to use an open hand on fleshy part of their bodies. They cannot leave any marks, bruises, it cannot bleed, that sort of thing. So that's the education is really, education piece and the awareness piece is very, very important. Sister Zainab, when she asked a question as to the policies, every state, every school has to have some policies in line with these, with the sexual abuse guidelines, or not just sexual abuse, but child abuse, like Sister Dr. Leila mentioned about bullying, right? So that is, I will tell you this, more than 65% of all child abuse cases do happen by other peers as well. So that's very common. You have to understand, like, for example, in New Jersey, there's a 4-year age difference. If both kids who are minors and they're involved in sexual abuse and they're victims of sexual abuse, or one child has abused the other child, sexually abused, there has to be a minimum of 4-year age gap. And there's a lot of other determining factors, as if the older child was taking care of the younger one or not. But all this education and awareness is very, very, very important. It's such a heavy topic. It's a very intricate topic. And I think we need to have a very comprehensive toolkit when it comes to this, right? And training is very lacking. Prevention is lacking. Islamic schools, Dr. Leila mentioned this in the very beginning, it's a big stigma. There's shame and a stigma associated with it. If you talk about bringing trainings or PDs to school, Islamic schools are then thinking, oh, maybe the community is going to think that we're having some sort of issues related to child abuse or sexual abuse, right? So we need to get over that. And this is a cyber age. There's a lot of stuff that's happening online. Kids are involved in social media, things spread very quickly. Sexting happens is a big thing. Sexting involves a lot of sexual assault. There's pornography in it. There's exhibition and voyeurism that I mentioned. So awareness needs to happen. Sorry, I just went off topic. I love to talk. So
no, it's okay. Thank you, Azra. Actually, and I'm going to, somebody's asked a question here in the chat directly to me.
And
so I'm going,
you listen to them.
okay.
So
I'm going to say the question, and actually it brings up a topic that we were talking about internally. So the person messaged, is there a developmentally appropriate curriculum to educate students on good and bad touches, as well as inappropriate behavior that Islamic schools can implement? So we talked a little bit about this in our planning group. And Azra, if you can just give a kind of 1-minute spiel on that part, and then I'd like to ask Brother Ismail to speak briefly, just 1 minute, on the curriculum that you guys have. And it sounds like maybe Leila has something to say too here. Yes, go ahead. Azra.
You just wanted me to talk about the touches portion of it?
So so subhanAllah, we have a way that we talk about this, that we've learned about this, that sometimes we don't even realize might actually lead to some confusion with our own students. So Azra's going to make kind of a point about that, and then I'll ask Ismail to talk about the curriculum.
Yes, I know there was discussion going on in the WhatsApp group, but I was busy at work and then I got distracted. But certain terminology that we use is highly inappropriate. So us researchers, or when we get training from proper researchers and stuff, we avoid the terms good and bad touches. We use safe and unsafe touch. And the reason being that a bad touch may physically feel good to the child. And like I said, it may not seem right up here. Mentally, they're struggling with the idea as to what's happening, what just happened, but physically it may feel good to them. So we do not use those terms at all. Good touch and bad touch. We use safe and unsafe touches. Same thing when you're talking about the grooming process, we use safe and unsafe secrets. So any that would result in negative feelings, you don't have to keep that secret, right? Because this is what the perpetrators do. They compel you, or they groom you to keep it a secret. There's a concept of threats, there's a concept of bribes involved in it, right? So as educators, you need to understand that. Like I said, training is very important. So you need to know exactly what terminology to use. Another thing to know is that the younger, the sooner you teach the kids the proper terminology for the sexual organs, it's very, very important. We have little kids as young as second or third grade or kindergartners that would come and maybe disclose sexual abuse going on, but then the teacher just dismisses it because they think it's just, they don't have the right terms for private parts, for example. Right. So we teach them at a very young age. We had a child just yesterday saying things like, my dad puts his peanuts in the ground or in the cookie jar type of thing, right? Because those are the perpetrators use that kind of language, and the child is unaware of it, and it's very easy to get things dismissed that way, right? So we have to, sorry, I won't take too much time. But
thank you, Azra.
Yeah, important. Yes.
That's a couple of really good points there. And then Ismail, so to directly answer this question about the curriculum, I know that Al-Fatih Academy, so I would like you to speak about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo what Sister Azra is saying in terms of, there's a curriculum aspect to it, and then there's you as the instructors being able to, and as leaders being able to actually deal with it and have the right pedagogy. Like to the example that Sister Zainab gave in the chat with her question, like how you as a teacher respond in that moment makes all the difference with how that child can actually be redirected in the right way. So even if we have the right curriculum laid out, like we have to commit ourselves to like checking our own biases and our own thoughts about how have we been taught about this? Is that really the best way to teach it? What is the latest research, evidence-based practices with regards to how to talk about something like safe, unsafe touch, right? So I say that to say that that's a component of it that we all have to be committed to, that training and continuing to learn, which we've tried to embody here at school. And then, pulling from some of the resources that we've had available. We're in Virginia, so we're pulling from the Virginia Department of Education and their sets of standards regarding family life education. And we, through a process with imams and social workers, therapists, and counselors, both in-house and outside, work to develop an overview of how we would introduce certain topics at different ages. And something like recognizing safe and unsafe touches actually occurs with us starting from kindergarten, right? Just to give you a sense, and then it just builds, and we talk about, and we have it framed within concepts of purification, tahara, modesty, haya, physical health, mental health, and even spiritual health. So that framework, that overview, I already have the email ready here to give to Dr. Shaza, who can then send that. And I think it will serve as at least a starting point and a set of guidelines for what are the topics to think about and when. And then when you pull in resources like what, Sister Azra might provide, what others will provide, your state maybe provides, you can together as a team kind of tackle it as a whole.
Jazakallah khairan. We're at time. Aman, I see your question, and it's something that we talked about. I'll let you conclude, Dr. Leila, inshallah. I just wanted to say, yes, inshallah, I will make the commitment, inshallah, on behalf of ISLA to seek out and partner with these amazing human beings and resources and institutions and whatever we can do to support, inshallah, and connect and work with those who have the resources. So obviously we won't be able to do it all, and some things are state specific and county specific, but we will try to at least share out this session that Al-Fatih Academy did and partner with them as a parent workshop and training, as per Sister Afifa's suggestion yesterday too. Then inshallah, we'll do that and keep an eye out for that, inshallah. Yes, Dr. Leila, Allah, inshallah, you can conclude. Jazakallah khairan, everybody. Jazakumullah khairan.
Jazakumullah khair, really insightful information. SubhanAllah, as much as we think we know, I learned so much today as well. Jazakumullah khair. One of the things I'll just mention before closing is Our children have fitra, and the younger they are, the more in place that is. And teaching them to stay connected with that fitra, right? They know, we as human beings know, our hearts shift, right? That's how we know when something makes us uncomfortable, we know that it's wrong. And as we get older, we start to dismiss that fitra that Allah has given us in our hearts. And we actually need to teach our children to maintain that constant spiritual relationship with Allah that helps them keep that fitra, which will guide them into what's right and what's wrong. And so teaching them that when something makes you feel bad or uncomfortable, no matter how small or how scared or how big you think it is, that you need to, like, this is the way to deal with it. So focusing on the fitra is critical. May Allah protect all of our children. I would just urge you to please, I know that you took this seriously enough to join today. Please follow up in your schools with policies if you don't have them in your handbooks, with trainings for your teachers if you don't already have them, and then having the parent awareness. And then most critically is starting to implement them in the classrooms to teach our children how to protect themselves and how to identify someone who may be asking them or trying to get them to do something that is not appropriate. I really just want to say Jazakallah khair to Sister Afifa and her team for being so generous and sharing all their resources. I think it'll help a lot of our schools. May Allah reward you, and Sister Azra for your expertise. Jazakumullah khair. We'll close out with Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you, Brother Ismail, Sister Afifa, Uzma, Sister Amina, Sister Azra, Dr. Leila, Jazakallah khairan, to all of you who've joined us. Assalamu alaikum. I'll stop the recording. I'm happy to stay on just